Okay, so next, now we've done page improvements and cart improvements. So those are the two major things that you can control. All right. And that's really where most people stop, if they even get that far. Nobody goes all the way. Nobody does the full Monty. All right. But in this case, we're doing the full Monty. Pictures to come later. But first up, we're going to go over some speed improvements. All right. So our goals of the speed improvements are twofold. Number one, lower site bounce, which is going to then give us our secondary goal of getting more eyeballs on the site. Okay, so the first thing that you have to deal with is when people you buy traffic to your site, you're getting visitors or you're organic or whatever. People land on your site, and the very next thing that happens is the vast majority of them say, see ya. They don't even let the page load and they're gone. That's your average bounce. So you lose like 80% or more on average of your traffic before the page really even loads or they even really see what's there because people's ADD and attention spans are so short. So the more you can do to fix this, the better.
Yeah, one thing I wanted to add, and you'll see it in some of the stats farther into these slides, but because I was newer to e-commerce, so all this stuff that I had to dig into, I kept adding and adding and adding to our site, like Hotjar and the different images and a lot of the things, obviously, like Tanner made fun of earlier, the We Pay Shipping image. Well, I don't do Photoshop, so I would literally take screenshots and cut them and make them fit. Well, what I didn't realize was over time, doing that over and over to different pages and through this whole process, we had made our site extremely heavy. Well, you'll see some more stats too of our Google Analytics because I was working with Dimitri on it, and he told us right off the bat, or he told me right off the bat, he's like, "Man, your bounce rate is really high," and I just assumed a lot. He said a lot of times it has to do with not enough items in your store. Well, so we worked on trying to make the store look more full, but really in reality, there was several other factors that were affecting our bounce rate, and we're going to go through those here and explain how it happened and why.
Okay, so site speed. This is the second 60 days, okay? So first of all, we're just showing you a gain here, right? So we're going to show you because site speed obviously doesn't transfer. It's not like, okay, well, our site speed increased by 1 second, so we made $3 more. That's not how it adds up. But we want to show you here is the improvements and how they made such a big, big, big deal. So actually, Matt was very proud of this graphic that he had, this infographic that he had done. So I won't steal it. I'll let him talk about it.
So this is actually the first 30 days is what we used as our control. So the numbers on the left is actually what our store was doing in the beginning. Then, so when we go to next 30 days, up to this point, we hadn't, I literally, honestly, had never done anything at all to the site speed. And I say this because like so many people think like, oh, all these changes you guys made, you must have like known all this stuff. To be totally honest, I was in learning mode the whole time because I've worked with funnels. I've never worked with the store. So up to this first 30 days, our site was still at a 90% bounce rate. I mean, it was terrible. And I just assumed that once we got our store cleaned up and converting well, we would start adding more products, and that's what we would do to fix the bounce rate. But we'll go into the slides now and tell you what we did and actually show you what the monetary improvement was, which was a lot more than what I thought it would be. Oh, actually, okay, Tanner went to the next slide, so I can go ahead and do that. So essentially, uh, let me read what we have here. Everything here, yeah, it was literally everything to do on the site speed. It has nothing to do with conversion. It's literally to try to keep people from leaving. So what was happening, and I'm not sure in the next slide or not, I know our site speed, it was literally almost 11 seconds at this point. The thing is, you load your site all the time. You're looking at your store. So when you go to your site on your particular browser, it loads right away. So you don't pay attention to what the customer experience is. Well, when we did it in incognito mode, and then we also ran a site speed test, we realized what was happening for the users that we were paying to send from Facebook who had never loaded our site before. They would literally sit there and wait I'm surprised our bounce rate wasn't 100%, to be 100% honest with you, because it was a really, really heavy duty, tons hard to load site.
One thing here, guys. One thing about this. This is a huge thing because it's not it's not just your store. If you have a blog or a funnel or anything, any site that you make money off of and you visit constantly because you're constantly editing, making tweaks to, your browser caches images and files and scripts and everything to make it load faster. And it does this based on the frequency of your visitation. So you think, man, my site loads fast or my sales video loads really quick. But it doesn't. So an example was the book sales video that we have on for the e-commerce evolve, that first video. I was like, oh man, this video loads super fast. And Matt is constantly over here going, dude, this takes forever to load on my site. And then everybody else would tell me that. I'm like, no, 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 it's fast. It's just your guys' computer. But no, it was my computer. Okay. So the longer something takes, the less of a chance you're going to have to get a conversion out of somebody because people, first of all, in our society now, everybody has ADD, especially when they're on the internet. Just think about your cell phone. Like, if someone's having a conversation with you, chances are you're still flipping through your cell phone while you're listening to them. You're not even listening to them half the time because you're absorbed with your cell phone. Or most of us have like 65,000 tabs open on our browser. Why? Because as one page is loading, we're tabbing over to another page to do a search for something else already. Okay? So this is a huge thing, but it's not something that you normally think about if you don't actually pay attention to it. And your bounce rate is one of the biggest killers of being able to make money. If you can, let's say your conversion rate is just 1% on your store, your sales conversion rate's 1%. Well, that's okay, that's normal. All right. And let's say your bounce rate is, 90%. Yeah, we got the math on this. You're going to be blown away by what this actually does for you. So I'll stop talking real quick and we'll keep going.
All right. So again, I just wanted to reiterate that everything here was literally done in order to try to reduce our bounce rate because it was above 90%, and we were told that anything over 75 was a red flag. So we knew it was bad. We felt like we squeezed everything we could out of the store up to this point, and so then this was our next focus. And go ahead and go to the next slide. Here's where we're going to start the math. So we'll use our average dollar per visitor. So say we pay for 1,000 visitors to come to our site. Essentially 50 cents a web click. We would spend about $500 in order to get 1,000 visitors to our site. With a 90% bounce rate on landing, because the page took too long to load, we were essentially, for that 100 visitors for $500, it was literally costing us $5 a visitor because 9 out of 10 people that came to the site never even looked at it. So
guys, this is critical. All right, so Matt, one of the things Matt's really good at is Matt is a traffic ninja. Okay, this is what he's like, his real specialty is. He's learning all of this stuff because we wanted to get better at our stores, obviously. I mean, that's what we do here at Build, Grow, Scale. But Matt's real skill set is traffic. So he right away understood that what most people don't is that most people think that just because you're paying 50 cents per website click or link click or whatever it is that you're paying, you think that's what your actual cost to get a visitor to see your offer is. That's not the truth because nobody, I mean, think of the last Facebook ads course or training that you went and looked at. When did they ever tell you to take your link click and subtract your bounce rate from it to factor in your actual cost per real visitor? Nobody's ever said that. I've been through all of the trainings. Nobody talks about that stuff because they don't really think about it. They're not optimizing. They're just driving traffic, okay? They're flipping cash. So what we're showing you here is that 50-cent click is really costing you $5 per visitor. So now it makes more sense as to why you're not profitable, okay? Because you're paying more per actual visitor than you could really afford. And imagine how much more profitable you can be if you cut that down, which is what Matt's next point is.
Go to the next slide. Yeah, so now if you literally, this is where the incremental changes. Like everybody thinks that you got to talk about big numbers and huge percentages, all this other stuff to make a difference when you really don't. Like so far, I don't think we've shown you anything on this entire training that was more than a 2% increase. Here, This is a little different because we're saying if you reduce it by 10%, which is actually, it was much easier than what we thought it was. We actually reduced it by about 20. But for example purposes, when you use tens, it's easier. So just say, for example, you reduce the bounce rate by 10%. So now it's 80% instead of 90. You now have 200 visitors for that $500. So the net result is you literally cut your cost in half. You're only paying $2.50 a visitor rather than $5. So that's where the huge savings is. You're literally getting so many more eyeballs that you're paying for to go to your site anyways that can actually look at it and have a chance to buy something rather than go there, wait for it to load, get sick of it, and leave.
So this, guys, is a major epiphany slash light bulb moment for you if you have never heard this before. So I want to make sure you guys are with me on this. Let me know in the chat box how many of you guys are like actually understand this. Give me a 1 if it's the first time you've ever heard this, and a second, a 2 if you already knew this. Okay? And then tell me how excited you are to actually know this number now and realize this, okay? Because this is huge. So far, only one person, two people now, that's it. Two people out of the entire audience actually knew this, that the bounce rate actually affected how much your actual cost per visitor to your offer is. Okay, so now that we've actually got your attention, because you know what, guys, here's the reason we did this. Matt and I put this, actually, this was Matt's idea to break the math down this way, but we moved it up in front of the teaching because I knew that if we showed it to you first and said, hey, we did this to change the bounce rate, we did this, you guys would all go to sleep and you wouldn't pay attention because this bounce rate is probably the most boring sounding thing we've talked about on here today. But you make a 10% change and get a 50% reduction in cost, that's profound. So now I've got your attention, and now we can show you how to do it. We're kind of sneaky like that.
All right, so I'll go through, basically just read the slide, because what we did is what we did to increase it, probably the reason why it loaded so slow is my fault anyways, because I hadn't done any of this stuff or even understood like image size until someone else brought it to my attention. And the only reason why I tell you that is because, again, I don't want you guys to think like we're some special person and only we could have done this. It was literally just through digging and talking to other people about what we had to do to fix it. So we literally, a couple times, we bought a couple apps that like crunched the images and said it would reduce it, and we saw a very, very marginal improvement in load time. And again, then we would go back to the things that seemed more sexy and work on the cart and do all these other things, uh, not taking into effect that math that we showed you. Like literally, we did that. I did that math when I was putting this together, and we realized, wow, now uh, maybe we should have paid attention to this a little bit sooner in the timeline because of the profound difference that it made. But we even when I say we reduced every image, we didn't just do product images. We even reduced the size of the logo, the trust badges, the testimonials. We went through, and every single file, every single image that was on our site, we put it through. I think the next slide shows which tool that we put it through, Tanner. Yeah, imageoptimizer.net. And I know that in our mastermind, Black Label Mastermind, a couple other people, we had shared this with them. They're actually using Tiny PNG too with good results. We did use that. We did not see the same differences that they're talking about. So the one that we personally used on our site in order to get the speed increase was this imageoptimizer.net.
Imageoptimizer.net, it's a free and paid tool. You have, first of all, the free tool, if you use it like in a batch, it's going to overlay their watermark on all your images, okay? Because I got excited about it and had our dev guy say, hey, do that to my BGS site. And he did it, but with the free version, and it put imageoptimizer.net logos on all the BGS images on the entire site, which was not very fun. I didn't like that. So if you're going to use this, get the paid version. I don't remember how much it was, but it was cheap. Yeah, 25 bucks for the tool. Okay, so get the paid version because you can use it. The other thing is, what this was me too. I didn't realize. I mean, I'm not a tech guy, so I didn't. I thought when you saved a file as a JPEG or as a PNG in Photoshop, or you took a screenshot or whatever, that it was already web optimized for 72 DPI and all of this stuff, and that it was basically as compressed as it could be. I just assumed that because obviously like when you take a picture of something with a camera, it's a massive file, and then you save it for web and it gets small. So I thought that was it. So the reality is that a JPEG, a PNG, whatever, can be compressed even further. And a lot of these tools automatically save your image, like a screenshot tool or whatever, save your image at a 96 DPI when it really should be saving it at 72 or even lower. Now, the other thing that is crazy is different compression tools. They use different algorithms for this. It's all very techy, but reality is certain compression tools don't compress as well as other compression tools. So, we already thought it was compressed, and then we plugged it into here, and we saw, I think, like a 75% compression rate on images that we already thought were compressed. Okay, so we thought it was already as small as it could get, and when we compressed them, they actually got 75% smaller than that. So some of them, Matt said he was on mute, but he said 200 or 300% increase. We thought they were as small as they could get, but they actually shrunk by another 200 or 300% simply by doing this. This is one of the fastest ways you can overall speed up image load time. And yes, there is a quality loss, but it's negligible, and it's nothing that your customers are going to have an issue on.
And again, this is where you could, Tanner and I could have a debate on whether it's pretty or whether it converts well. My theory is if they bounce and they never see your site, who cares if the image was really pretty? If it's small enough so that it actually loads quick enough and they get a chance to see it, you have an opportunity to sell them. If it's really pretty and it's large, your site doesn't load fast and you don't have a chance to sell them anyways. And I'm not saying that he said not to do it. As soon as we talked about it, he did. But this is just a lot of times perfect will slow you down from getting it done. And we were more willing to get it done and test it, and the results speak for themselves. Okay, I'll go to the next slide. So, oh yeah, the other thing that we did, we ran a program called Pingdom, and what it does is it actually loads your site and then gives you a report, and it literally tells you what loads in what order, how long it takes, and essentially based on the size of the file, the way I look at it is like the det. So the more det that you have, or the larger the number of files that you have, the slower your site's going to load. So essentially we had several apps that we had tested on our site that we weren't really using, and you're only paying for them if like based on traffic through them. Well, we had shut them off. They were still in our site, and honestly we had just not thought about them. But when we ran this Pingdom, it literally showed that every single time someone came to that page, it was part of the load process. And so there was all this data from the past 60 days of all the different things that we had tested and tried that we didn't remove it, we just stopped using it. Well, that essentially, like I said, created just this huge load time and is dragging our site down. And another one that honestly, one of the largest drags on the site was this Hotjar. And so what we did, we didn't want to remove it because that tool literally has been responsible for at least 50% of our increase. The other 50% was just through, talking to other people, testing things, seeing what other sites had. But we didn't want to remove this. What we wanted to do is, what we used here, we actually went into the code and we commented it out, which means that it bypasses it, so it doesn't load it anymore. As soon as we decide to run another test, all we do, we just go in and remove those comments, then we can start using Hotjar again. But one thing that you guys should know is, like, we've recommended to everybody to use Hotjar, but you don't want to just leave it on your site if you're not using it, because it literally was about 50% of the drag on the site, because it has like heat maps, records the screen, does all this video stuff. It does a ton of things. In order for it to do all that, like, it burdens the site. So you can go to the next slide, Tanner. So this is something else that Tanner brought up. we actually took the DPI on all the images from 96 to 72, and that made another difference. It doesn't seem like very much, but if you look at percentage wise, that's probably about 30, 25% image size right there. So after a while, it doesn't matter if it's just one product image, but when your whole site needs these changes made to it over time, it was a massive change. So go ahead and go to the next slide. This is actually the fun part for me because I do like numbers. It's fun to go through it. This is our final result. The morning that me and the developers said, listen, today we actually shut the traffic off, and because we had tried several things to speed our site up, and they never really made a significant difference. So we said, all right, like we're just going to buckle down today, shut the traffic down, and all we're going to focus on is the speed time. And this is exactly what our results were at 10 a.m. when we tested it. It was 16.16 seconds, which, like I said, I really honestly don't know why anyone ever saw our site. About 3.5 seconds is the average attention span. I guess what this told us is that we really had a good product because they wanted to see it. They were willing to wait. And the other numbers don't really, honestly, I don't understand them, like 24 megabytes. I get that there was 167 requests. It means they had to process that many things before it would load. So 7 hours later, we retested the site after we did the things that we just told you about, and it was 2.08 seconds. So, and then the next morning, as the caching started dropping from the site, Google Analytics measured it at 1.87 seconds, which is a reasonable amount of time. So for us, like, it was a massive change. We actually reduced our bounce rate over 20%. So if you go back to the math that we showed you earlier, we reduced it 10% more than that. And so if you do the math, we literally cut our cost of traffic in half by the 7 hours worth of work that we did on our site.
So this made a huge change, right? 16-second load time down to 1.87. So now we're talking literally about site speed from inbound traffic, paid traffic. So Matt mentioned Google Analytics. That's the GA right there on the screen. So Google, as we all know, is kind of the king of the internet when it comes to your site's ranking, search engine, organic traffic, all of those things. Now, what we did not realize or know, but we learned as we started learning about this. I know a lot about SEO, but I never realized how much bounce rate and page load speed and everything actually affects the new Google algorithm for ranking. So Google has this 1 to 100 scale for site speed and load time. And so it's 1 to 100. So we figured anything over 50 was doing pretty good. But Google's actual number is 70. If you're above a 75, which is where almost 90% of the sites are, you're on the shit end of the stick with Google. They don't like you because you screw up the user experience for their users. Because again, we're coming back to this whole user experience thing. It's what's important. So we thought, oh man, we were in I think a 60s, right? Weren't we 65 or we were 58? And we're like, oh, we're doing pretty good, but not really. And then, so the other important thing here is, if you are going to, obviously you want it, but if you're going to approach SEO with any kind of gusto and really try to get your page and your products to rank in Google, then site speed is very, very important because it's a weighted piece of their new algorithm for determining how you're going to rank and what stuff's going to be served up to the customer, which the customer is Google searchers. So if you want SEO to be a big part of your deal, then your speed test is even more important, okay? So it's not just about the paid traffic and the load time. It's also about getting Google to give you any kind of attention at all.